Irene.
Our mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are very helpful to parents all around the world, and they are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not able to attend this meeting live can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. And I just want to personally thank Dr. Kerr for all that he does, and just so blessed to have you here tonight. Thank you so very much.
Oh, it's my privilege.
Yes, thank you. This is wonderful. I'll just read a short bio so that you guys know about him, but I'm sure that many of you have already read his book and seen his different documentaries. Dr. Christopher Kerr is the Chief Medical Officer and Chief Executive Officer at Hospice and Palliative Care Buffalo. Born and raised in Toronto, Canada, Chris earned his MD as well as a PhD in neurobiology. Outside of direct patient care, Chris's focus is in the area of patient advocacy. His passion is palliative care and a belief that such care should be throughout the continuum of illness. Under Dr. Kerr's medical leadership, Hospice Buffalo now serves 1,200 patients a day, half of whom receive services prior to hospice. Dr. Kerr's background in research has evolved from bench science towards the human experience of illness as witnessed from the bedside, specifically patients' dreams and visions at the end of life. Although medically ignored, these near universal experiences often provide comfort and meaning, as well as insight into the life led and the death anticipated. To date, the research team at Hospice Buffalo has published multiple studies on this topic and documented over 1,500 end-of-life events, many of which are videotaped. This work was the subject of his TEDx Buffalo talk, which has been viewed over 3.5 million times. It has been the subject of reports on the BBC, in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic Monthly, Scientific American Mind, Huffington Post, and Psychology Today. It is also featured in a recent docuseries on Netflix called Surviving Death, and a PBS World Channel documentary called Death is But a Dream that came out last month. Dr. Kerr's work has been published in a book, Death is But a Dream, by Penguin Random House, which was released in 2020 in multiple languages. You can learn more about him as well as the work of his team at www.drchristopherkerr.com. I'll put that in the sidebar. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Christopher Kerr.
Well, hello, everybody. I still haven't got comfortable with this medium, but I'll give it my best shot. This is a privilege. You're a very special group, and I hope what I have to say resonates with you. I've never given this talk in 30 minutes, so I'm going to kind of just free associate, if that's okay, and kind of whip through the first part of this. So this work really began not from a spiritual vantage point, actually. It began when I really by fluke ended up working at hospice, and was quickly made aware that patients were having a subjective experience of death. So where medically we tend to focus on the organ systems, there was this inner experiences of dying, this other dimension to dying, the experiential side of dying. And interesting story, I was trying to teach this. And I wasn't necessarily viewing it as a keyhole to what lay beyond, but just understanding that dying itself was a mystery and that there was a lot of misconceptions around dying that need to be addressed. Every time I would try to teach young doctors, the response I typically got was there was no evidence for this. So we began doing our studies. Because we knew that people would have different misunderstandings of what these patients were like, either they were feeble-minded or confused, we started videotaping them. Long story short, we've published 8 papers to date, gotten very little notice in the medical community. They get published and a little bit of noise. But then what happened was it seeped out to the non-medical community and went around the world. And the videos that I'm going to show you actually now are part of these documentaries. So with that, I'm going to pull away myself and put on my PowerPoint. Here we go. We practice, so this should work. There we are. Oops. Okay. I think what the take home from this is that dying is less about failing parts and it's more about life closure. And this is a process that holds an enormous comfort and meaning. To date, we've looked at 1,500 patients, and very quickly what we found was that we asked people daily as they approached death, that as they got closer to death, they were having an increase in the frequency of these events. We call them dreams, we call them visions, but our patients themselves typically state that they don't normally dream or recall their dreams. These felt actual, vivid, virtual. When we measured realism on a 1 to 10 scale, with 10 being the most realistic, they typically come back with a score of 10. When we talk about visions, it's not that we walk in and they're seeing people. We think that they're so vivid they feel virtual again, or that they're lived. When we measured this amongst large patient populations, close to 90% of people were experiencing one of these type of events. The most common themes, far and away, we're seeing people that they loved and that they had lost. It's very specific to who they see. It's people who love them and secured them unconditionally. And it tends to edit out people who withheld love or harmed them. As they get closer to death, that's who they see the most. When we measured content and comfort, seeing the deceased was associated with the highest level of comfort. So there seems to be this process as you get closer to death, it's built-in mechanism where you're almost put back together. And what we see is remarkable is that it tends to affirm life, not deny death, but it does lessen the fear. This first patient, his name is Jeannie, and her daughter Julie is also going to be speaking. We've looked a great deal at the effect of this on the bereaved, which is really remarkable, as you see. A couple of points that are important to clarify: that the vantage point is everything. So we're not talking about the minutes or hours even before death. We're talking about the days, weeks, and sometimes months. These are IRB approved studies. Patients can't be confused. They have to sign consents. There's tests that we do to measure clarity, etc. So these people are clearly cognitively intact. And with that, I'll introduce you to Jeannie.
I think more and more people are getting a little bit more hip to dreams than they were before.
When I think of my mother, I just think of a really vivacious, energetic. She was the type of person that when she walked into a room, it lit up. So when I walked in one morning, she said, "I had the most amazing dream." And I said, "Tell me about it." And she said it was so detailed and so real that she felt that it was actually happening.
And I was laying in bed and people were walking very slowly by me. The right-hand side, I didn't know, but they were all very friendly and they touched my arm or my hand when they went by. But the other side were people that I knew. My mom and dad were there, my uncle. Everybody I knew that was dead was there. and they passed and did the same thing.
She described this as more of an event that she would believe almost happened. She knew that she didn't believe it happened because she woke up and she was at home, but she said it was as if she were in a different place.
Boy, I remember seeing every piece of their face. And I mean, I know that was my mom and dad and uncle and my brother-in-law.
That dream and her successive dreams and experiences made her feel comforted.
I felt good. I felt good to see some people. And the other ones didn't bother me either. I have seen my mother recently more. I can't say that my mother and I got along all those years, but we made up for it at the end.
And she said to me, "I'm not crazy, Jewel." And I said, "I don't think you are, Mom. It's okay." So,
when I told my family that I was happy about it, and that's what they asked. How does it make you feel? Well, I feel good about it.
I feel the comfort and the peace that some of these experiences brought to her gave her exactly what she needed to pass on. For me, it affirmed that you're not alone when you die.
So a couple of points. You can tell that these pre-death experiences are obviously recalled in remarkable detail. Typically, little is said between the dreamer and those in the dream, yet everything seems to be understood, felt, or intuited. Finally, the vividness becomes striking, particularly at the end. And what's fascinating about people like Jeannie is they're really describing things that might be off-putting, like the deceased walking by, but they're never described in those terms. In this next video, you're going to meet Florence. What's interesting is, unlike a lot of near-death experiences, end-of-life experiences typically don't include great insights, epiphanies, pronouncements, etc. The dying aren't typically left with questions. They don't need analysis. They don't come out of it with metaphor. The kind of time for therapy is over. Instead, they dream of things that matter, sort of real moments that have lived, as you'd see with Florence, like sitting around the table, the feeling of familiarity, of being loved, and again, being put back or made whole. So listen as Florence kind of refamiliarizes herself with the love of the family that she's lost.
Tell us about the dreams.
It's very hard to pinpoint because they were so real. And all these years, my husband's been dead and my daughter.
Okay, and when did your daughter pass?
7 years ago.
Okay, at the age of 37?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And your husband died?
61.
61, okay.
I have seen them, not their face, not their clothes, but I knew it was them. But there was nothing really remarkable to define that was Dick or John. But the other night, I fell right into a sleep. We were like sitting at the kitchen table, laughing. I could see their faces. I could tell it was their clothes. We were laughing, we were talking, we were eating. It was like a regular Sunday dinner night.
That's wonderful.
It is. And then Monday night, the same thing happened. But the same identical thing. We're laughing, we're talking, we're having a ball.
How did it make you feel?
I woke up Monday morning and I went, was that real? And I said, that was real. That was really real.
It happened.
We were sitting there as much as we were sitting here.
Okay. Have you ever had a dream that was that vivid?
No.
No. That was the most vivid dream. And we hear this a lot, and it's very hard to tell whether it's real or it's a dream. Yeah.
It made me feel like that whole 12 years had never existed.
12 years, that's interesting. 12 years since he's been gone. Okay. Because it was so real that he was there in the present.
And 7 years since my daughter was gone. It was like we were always together, never separated.
Yeah. How does it make you feel about the prospect of dying? How does it change your view?
I'm not afraid of dying.
Does it make you think you're going to see them? Okay.
If I quit swearing.
If you what?
Quit swearing.
You're worried you're going to end up in the wrong place. I have a feeling you're okay. It's interesting that you can be in a dying process and at the same time feeling very much alive, right? And that made you feel alive.
Okay.
So dying, as witnessed by patients like Jeannie and Florence, is of course this paradox, right? They're physically declining, they're lessening. Florence actually dies 5 days later after this was filmed. Yet they're emotionally and spiritually very alive and vibrant and present. Very near death, both women experience this growing sense of belonging and of connectiveness, of again being put back together. We have looked specific at this question of whether dying includes positive psychological change, and we have published our results using validated measures of post-traumatic growth. This idea that out of a seemingly negative experience, often war is an example, that there's also gain. And briefly, what we found was that patients who reported end-of-life experiences, which is again nearly 90% of people, scored higher in nearly every measure of post-traumatic growth when compared to patients who were not dreaming. So in other words, people don't stop living because they are dying. And in fact, the evidence suggests that patients adapt and gain insight right up until the very end. This is a beautiful quote from Emily Dickinson. Children are not normally included in our formal studies, but we have published a case series. And understandably, the experiences of children are unique for a variety of reasons. As the poem refers this notion of faith anew, they don't have reference points for death often, and they often lack the language for mortality, and many have not even known someone who has passed. Often they know animals who have passed, and these deceased animals are often featured prominently in several of the children whose cases we have written up. In these instances, the children don't seem to distinguish between the animal and the human world. The message is the same. The presence of their pets meant in their words that they are healthy, that they were loved, and they're not alone. In several of these cases, the end-of-life experiences help to inform the patient about their inevitable death, and yet they are overwhelmingly comforting. The following video is a patient I cared for. Her name was Jessica, and she was 13 and very near death at the time of this video. In addition to the return of her dog Shadow, who was deceased, her pre-death dreams addressed her biggest fear, which was, how does she exist? Who is she without her mom? But then Jessica dreams of her mother's deceased friend, Mary.
Mary is my mom's, one of her best friends that she passed away from leukemia. And
How long ago?
2005.
Okay.
And I think I was pretty close to her.
Uh-huh.
And she was very close to my mom. She was nice. Okay. And what happened was I seen her in my mom's room, and I was just coming up the stairs and going into my room, but I stopped because I seen something at the corner of my eye. Mm-hmm. And she was playing with my mom's curtains. And she had her favorite shirt on, my mom told me, because I told my mom it was gray and blue checkered shirt, like a flannel shirt that she had on. And she was playing with her curtains, and my mom's phone was charging, and she was looking down at my mom's phone, and I told my mom that, and my mom was pretty shocked, and I said, see, she's probably happy that you did a good thing, and she's coming to say hi. And I had a feeling that she was just coming to tell me that, you're gonna be okay, everything's fine. But she didn't look at me. She was just looking, but I had a feeling if I called out her name, she would look at me, but I didn't want to scare my mom.
How did it make you feel? What did you get from her? What did you feel from seeing her?
I felt a sign of relief
Yeah.
and happiness because she was a very strong person, and I know that I'm strong, and my mom tells me all the time that I'm like her.
And you told me that you thought that, oh Mom, I saw an angel. That's how you
And
said
I
you
thought
felt,
I
and you
saw
said,
an
felt peace,
angel.
and then
I
you were
felt
able to go to
peace.
sleep.
And then I was able to go to sleep.
So it was really comforting.
That was comforting, yes.
You weren't afraid.
I wasn't afraid of it at all. My dreams that I have are good dreams now, which I dream about my old dog Shadow that has passed away, and I see him, and he's in a good place, and he's running, he's having fun, but then again he runs away, and I never see him again. I feel like it's his meaning of saying goodbye. I have an occasionally where he comes to see me, to I have a feeling to have him say it's okay, that I'm in a safe place, and
He comes with a meaning for you, and that meaning
because
is.
we were close.
And
Even though I didn't like him half the time because he would always be on my butt, but I still loved him. Yes, I do have to sort out what's real and what's imagined. I usually just try to lay there in my bed and try to reenact that dream and just think about what just had happened to wake me up.
Yes.
But I do get afraid because I see how dark my room is, and I look on the ground, and the one night I happened to see a long black thing, and that was him by my bed. Yeah, and then I went down to the ground and went like that, and it looked like his head went up, and then he was gone.
Okay. So you do things when you wake up to check to see.
If they're really there.
Yeah.
I feel that meaning is a meaning of love, and that they're there and they're always going to protect you.
It's funny because he doesn't say anything to you.
No, dogs don't talk.
No, but dogs give messages.
Yeah, they give you a message of heal and love that you're okay.
Okay. So that's Shadow.
That's Shadow. Mary.
This next patient is Ginny, and she was 16 at the time of this was filmed. In the interest of time, I'm just going to really let her tell her own story. But I think what's fascinating is a couple of things. One is that she recreates, or a world is recreated for her to replace the one she's leaving, but secures her and loves her and actually warms her, as you can tell by even the senses that she's describing. The other thing that's really important is, and I don't have time to go into this, unfortunately, but the effect of these experiences on the bereaved, how we see and experience our loved ones leaving us absolutely affects grief, how we remember, how we process. And we've done studies, I think now, on 750 bereaved family members, and it's very simple. What's good for the patient is good for their loved ones. And we've actually used measures of grief processing and shown that loved ones who actually experience this has a very positive influence on their grief processing. But with that said, I'll introduce you to Ginny.
When I was sleeping, deep sleep, my Aunt Miriam came down to bring me up to heaven, and she was playing with me with Barbies.
So when you saw her, she looked good?
Yeah.
Was she smiling?
Yeah.
Okay.
She had to wear.
She what?
She had to wear oxygen.
Okay.
Because she was very old.
Did she wear the oxygen in the dream?
No.
She looked better then?
Yeah.
Okay. And you got to play Barbies with her?
Yeah.
Do you dream of any animals?
Yeah.
What type of animals do you dream of?
My cousin's dog that passed away.
What was the dog's name?
Moose. I see Daisy. That was my grandma's dog.
Daisy?
She passed away.
Okay. And so you get to play with that dog in your dreams?
Yeah.
What does all of this mean to you? You get to see all these animals. That's kind of neat, huh?
Yeah.
So these dreams, is it fun to go to sleep to think about what you're going to see?
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't scare you then?
No.
Okay. And when you see your aunt, where are you?
In a castle.
Really? Is it beautiful?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's huge.
Describe it for me. Are there other people there?
No.
Okay. Is it warm?
Yes.
Is it sunny?
There's a window that you can see the sun through it,
Uh-huh.
and it has God on the window.
Like a church would?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds beautiful. So this is a pretty special place.
And then there's a piano,
Mm-hmm.
and then a pretty painting of a baby, the little baby. No, the church.
Yeah, like in a church. In a manger kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think the castle is? What does it mean?
Safe place.
Safe place. Yeah. Safe place, and it's sunny and it's warm. And your aunt's there.
And then they have a pool,
Really?
a built-in pool.
Whoo! You like to swim?
Yeah.
Okay. You nailed it. And you got the world's best smile. Is there anything else we should know about you?
That I'm beautiful.
You are beautiful.
When I was
Right. I had to, in the interest of time, I edited out the next section. Sort of some of those questions seem leading. What happens is we're seeing them clinically, and what she did was she listed about 10 animals she knew, from neighbors' ferrets to grandma's cats. So we already know that when we go back. What happened actually at the end of her life, which is also captured on video, is very interesting, but very quickly, there was a baby monitor in her room, and she wasn't brought up in a church, and truthfully, religious references are very rare, but she has this baby monitor, and her mom's in the kitchen, she's hearing her talk, and so she goes in and says, what do you need or whatever. She said nothing, and she goes, but you keep talking on the monitor, and her mom says, well, who are you talking to? She goes, I'm talking to God. And she described him as an old man, but a kind old man. And that was on a Monday, and she had been pretty distressed leading up to that. She slept on a Tuesday, and she passed away on a Saturday following. This next video, and I hope I'm probably going over time a little bit, I just think is very important, because this is of a young lady who had a young child, was in the promise of life, and had not necessarily been fully informed by her care team where she was at with respect to her disease. And what's fascinating about these experiences is how often they self-inform the patient to exactly what's happening in a reassuring way that's really out of our grasp, and how that ultimately what seems to happen is that it restores these kind of connections between and across lives that are ultimately very securing, and again, lessening the fear of death. So this next video is of Sierra, and really it includes a care team from physician to chaplain to social workers who are struggling with trying to get her to understand where she is at in her illness, which was problematic because we had siblings who weren't understanding, a child who needed assistance and all that sort of thing. So this is Sierra.
Sierra was a 28-year-old African-American woman. She was diagnosed with colon cancer after what seemed like far too long between the presentation of her symptoms and the actual diagnosis. So she went for many months undiagnosed. By the time she was diagnosed, her cancer was already too far advanced to really make an impact or extend her life.
Sierra was very determined to do absolutely everything she could to fight her disease for her son, for her fiance, and for her family.
She was clearly not in the mindset of a dying person. She had little to no insight, at least insight that she would admit to, of the fact that she was nearing the end of life or even heading towards the end of her life.
Her family was not at all ready to see her go. They loved her and they wanted her to fight this as well.
After we had a meeting, a very touching meeting, where the son finally put words to what was the experience in the room, and that is the question, is my sister going to die? At that point, we decided that we better move the meeting into Sierra's room.
We all gathered together with Sierra. Her mom, her stepdad, her siblings, and her care team here at the hospice inpatient unit. Dr. Farrell was with her, speaking to her, trying to explain to her what we were no longer able to do for her medically.
During that time, what happened was something most profound, and that was that Sierra actually engaged her predeceased grandfather right in the room.
It happens every single time I talk about it. I get goosebumps, I get this sense of amazement and emotion to be there with someone when they experienced a vision like that. She saw her grandfather.
Afterwards, Sierra's mother said, "What did he say?" And he said, "I'm very proud of you. You are a wonderful granddaughter. You are a wonderful daughter. You are a wonderful mother." As the conversation was going on, Tammy asked Sierra, "What is he saying to you now?" He's saying, "I'm going to see you soon, and everything is going to be okay." At that point, Tammy said, "Listen to your grandfather." And it was at that point, really, that the family knew that Sierra's time was limited.
It was probably less than a week after that vision that she was able to let go and she passed. If we discount end-of-life dreams and visions, we're doing a disservice to our patients, to their families, and how they are able to not only experience the loss of a loved one, but how they then are able to grieve later.
I think she gained the comfort that she needed, not to give up, but to be at peace and let whatever was going to happen. I think her grandfather being there, of course, made it a lot more comforting for her. I think had Sierra not had those visions, I think she would have been more frightened. I think she may not have had that, I don't want to say easiness, but that I think she would have been more compelled to vocalize how frightened she was. But knowing that he was there for her, it made it very much easier for me, because I knew she would have him to be with and he would take care of her. It does help me process the loss, because I believe they visit us, both of them. You know, I think, you know, things happen for a reason. And yeah, she's not in pain anymore, and she's back to her healthy, playful, joyful self, you know. And he's there to watch over her as he did here. When it comes to dealing with patients who have these experiences, is not to dismiss their feelings and what they are relaying to you, what they've seen, who they're speaking with, because it's real. It's not, in my opinion, it's real. To them, it's real.
Okay, am I visible?
Yes, you are. That was amazing. And I was just going to tell you, you don't have to go only a half an hour. You can go longer, but
Oh,
we do have some questions, and
sure.
everyone is just so appreciative. This is just perfect right after Mother's Day too, because it's always a difficult holiday for a lot of our moms. And Irene had a beautiful Mother's Day meeting, but it's always wonderful to know what you're sharing with us. I would like to very quickly just ask you, because I know that you've talked about this in the documentary, in the book, about is this a new phenomenon, or is this something that
No,
has happened
no. It's
before?
actually recently I got contacted by a 3-time Emmy award-winning filmmaker who's doing a documentary with the indigenous people in the outback in the Amazon and on environment. But she read the book, she calls me, she says, you know, everything you're describing is part of their culture and their belief system. No, there's nothing new. It's something that's always been there but lost. We've medicalized, dying, and truthfully extinguished these other elements that are innate to our humanness. So this is really more about reclaiming dying as a human process rather than a medical one.
That's wonderful. And you're right. I mean, we're coming back to the way that we were before. I think maybe, do you think that COVID has something to do with it, with this, or the fact that people were spending more time as families and spending more time together and concentrating
In some
on
ways, I think so. Care was driven out of institutions and into homes. So I think there was this reclaiming of dying, which used to always be the case. Yeah, very much.
Well, I have a question from one of our parents about the dreams themselves. Are there ever any negative dreams that people have, or scary?
And I have a spectacular video on that. About 17% are. But what's interesting, we haven't had that experience with children. But you die how you live. And if you've had a traumatic life, if you've had deep regrets, it's hard not to live and have wounds. And those are often revisited. But the mistake is to think that discomforting dreams aren't carry meaning. Sometimes they're actually the most meaningful and transformative. An example is a mother who had a child who fought addiction and was in jail, and her identity and value as a parent was central to her questioning. And in her dreams, her parents come to her and tell her that she's loved and what a good mother she was. Veterans who suffer survivor's guilt and then are readdressed by the soldiers that had passed. and comforted. So the underlying thematic is distressing: war, addiction, jail, but the release and the closure that comes from these events is equally clear.
That's beautiful. I was wondering if you could tell just a little bit about the dreams that the soldiers have. These are dreams with soldiers who are on their own side that they fought with, as well as soldiers who were on the other side. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the one that I talked about, the most meaningful one, it's in my book, and I talked about in the TED talk, was a gentleman who was from Texas and who was at 17, I believe, involved in the invasion of Normandy. And he was actually on a rescue. They sent a rescue boat to get men who were trapped and being shot. And so he could only gather so many in his boat. And there was body parts and dead. And it haunted him for 67 years. And he never spoke of the war. At the end of life, these themes reoccurred, and he was having a hard time sleeping. And then before his death, the soldiers meet him on the beach and say, "We're coming for you." And he got to relive the day he got his discharge papers, which was the best day of his life, and official notice that he was in fact not going to die at war. And he slept after that. So again, the theme is negative, but the process is transformative. So
That's beautiful. Could you tell us a little bit about if you don't mind, your own personal religious beliefs, and how this has affected you personally?
Yeah, so I have fought very hard to maintain objectivity, because one of my goals was to not be part of the discussion, was really to just translate what patients and families were telling it, to give it. It's different when I'm talking to you, who's open-minded, open-hearted, and it comes with it with a very sophisticated understanding. This was originally meant for a clinical audience who has enough time with dying, let alone the experience of dying. So I was very clear in just keeping it very objective. I think where you end up after all these years, I've been doing this for almost 23 years, is that there's a better story, right? Is that you can't do this work day in, day out, and thousands and thousands and thousands of patients all have a dying process that is not what we anticipate, but one that's rich in meaning and love and comfort. And I think where I am at is that I'm struck by this notion that there's this continuity, there's this connection that surpasses time. So it's not unusual to see somebody in their 9th decade of life lost a parent or a child at a young age and re-experience all the presence and familiarity and love of that person. It always seems to be tangible, whether that person is physically alive and present or not. So it seems as though the best parts of having lived aren't gone. And as far as I'm concerned, is if they're again, it's like what I was saying, there's so little said. So this doesn't have to be an exchange of words. It's just this feeling. There's this whole idea of fighting the dying of the light kind of thing isn't true. They're not fighting against, they're actually fighting towards. And that's what's really remarkable. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Camille is asking if there are any brain activity studies on the dreams and visions.
No, there's I was reviewing a paper that there's something called terminal lucidity, where people have heightened alertness. I don't think it's necessary, because these are people who are often driving their cars, living independent, and doing their taxes. So we know that they're cognitively intact. And I have trouble, to some extent, trying to dissect the biology of this, right? It's a question of the brain versus the mind. And I think where I end up is we just need to have reverence for it. So the fact that we can't measure, biopsy these experiences, like saying, show me love. We know it exists. The organic basis of it is less clear to us. And in the end, does it matter? I'm not sure it's ours to own. I think we just need to respect it. So
Well, tell me, were you surprised in the interest that this research garnered?
Oh my God.
And tell me also, it sounds to me like it hasn't changed enough in terms of the way that end-of-life patients are being treated. Do you think that that's moving in the right direction?
Actually, we have some data that suggests it is. So to answer the first part of your question, yeah, I was stunned. This was never the goal. I meant it for a medical audience, and I knew tomatoes would be thrown at me, kind of thing. And then, yeah, it's what has driven this. And I never wanted to write a book. What drove this for? I never wanted to do a documentary. Just had the film. What has driven it forward? What's interesting in the TED Talk is not that there's 3.5 million views or whatever it is. It's the over 5,000 comments, and that what's interesting in the comments is that people get this has provided a context, a validation for many people in which to share their experiences. There's nothing new. These studies aren't elaborate, but it was put in a framework that gave people a reference point. And so it's meaningful in that it allows people a platform on which to share and understand and feel that, yeah, this happened and this is matter and this is not uncommon. So for that part of it, I'm very grateful. But yeah, the book just went out in China yesterday. So yeah, it's just really interesting. It just kind of has this forward, but it's also very telling. It's the fact that the disconnect between the people who provide our care versus the people who receive our care is concerning. This matters to people enormously. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And so could you tell us, kind of in a nutshell, the characteristics of what most of these people are seeing in these dreams, just so that people can understand what these dreams are like to the
Sure.
patients.
Yeah.
And
So on content, approximately a third of people dream of travel or preparing to go. Pets are enormously common. Again, that's something from life that has taught us to nurture love unconditionally, and they're very common. Absolutely deceased loved ones, and if there was one parent that withheld love or conditioned love, that person is excluded and the other one. So it tends to focus on absolutely the positive, the people who truly nurtured us. Those are the themes. Religious symbolism or references are rare, but the argument goes like this. The tenets of faith are all over this, which is love and forgiveness. And as somebody wrote, we first learn about God when we learn love and forgiveness through our family, and the first and last church is really our family. And that's kind of where this ends up. So those are the common themes. Again, very little is said. This idea of somebody waiting for you, there never seem to be bothered by them. It's just an understanding. I've got some remarkable videos where they're just overwhelmed trying to describe it, and they never describe the fear.
So I know you talked about this kind of ineffable quality to the dreams as well, that Dr. Raymond Moody also talks about, that you cannot describe it. You can't really describe the feeling, but it's complete peace. Very, very vibrant. The dreams are incredibly vibrant as well, colorful, and peaceful. And I love that they are that way. Irene has a question. Go ahead, Irene.
I was just wondering if you've studied Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work. Have you read her books, been
Yes.
involved with, because it certainly seems like you've picked up maybe where she started.
No, honestly, I if I did, it's not intentional. I think I read it in as an undergraduate, I think in a psychology course. I have my own beliefs on some of, I don't know if, I don't think she ever intended it to be a universal process in set stages. And I think sometimes it's interpreted that way, at least grief processing. I think that there's enormous individualism to it. And even on things like diagnosis in terms of acceptance and all that sort of thing, there's huge variability, often age dependent. My partner of 22 years, my medical partner, had a terminal diagnosis as of last week. And all I felt and saw from him was an abundance of grace and acceptance. So it's all over I think in part of me actually deliberately stays away from it because I reject kind of this formalized approach to a lot of this. I rather meet the person, who they are, where they're at, and if that makes any sense.
Well, I remember reading in her early works about how family members weren't allowed to be with patients who were dying, and how she really wanted to bring about change to allow family to be part of the dying process.
It's fascinating to me that her work, 50 years later, is still in its original form. The universality of it is in terms of that is absolutely remarkable. Yeah, we sterilized dying, and I've actually taken care of, and one of them is in my book, and actually in the documentary, who was a child when her mother was dying and really removed from the process and the lasting damage that did. I think we do better and serve best when we break down barriers to the bedside, don't create them. And medicine went through this very patronizing time when we thought we would know what was best for one human to interact with another, a mother with a child with a mother. It's absurd. Everybody has their own, I'm taking care of this wonderful family from another country with a dying child who they view as a blessing, as unifying to them and as a family. And they, on the bad nights when she's in the chair and breathing's compromised, they all sit around the chair. So to think that these people would be pulled away from that experiences which they feel is so central to who they are just seems inhumane at best.
Thank you.
I loved the fact that the hospice nurse, I believe it is, who was working with you on this study, was talking about the fact that now it's important for us to all realize that when people have these dreams, not to say that you don't believe it or it didn't happen, and believe that it did happen for them, and to encourage all of these patients to be excited about them and to know that it's their reality. Do you think that this is something that happens in other palliative care, or are you unique in?
Oh no, not at all. I think I know this. The closer you are to the work, so if you take nursing assistants and nurses, you're talking to the choir. If you talk to physicians, they're all looking at you dumbfounded. So if you've done any personal care or really delivered care, there's nothing here that you don't know. I had the experience actually of going, we have a campus here of going and lecturing to nurses, and they're everyone knowing the head and then coming to lecture to young medical students who have no idea what I'm talking about. So yeah.
That's amazing. And so becoming a doctor, was that something that you always wanted to do, or was it something that you had, that your family wanted you to do? Could you talk a little bit about that?
That's a great story. I'm a 5th doctor in a row. I actually even have all my forefathers' degrees, and my dad died when I was a kid. And I'm probably the only person in the Western Hemisphere who was scared to tell his mother that he got into medical school. So no, my mom did not want me to become a doctor at all. I never went to a graduation. She cried when she found out, the whole thing. Yeah.
So why is that? Because she knew that you were going to be giving up your life to your profession?
Yeah, my dad was a trauma surgeon. His father was an OB/GYN, and she felt that you could help people without sacrificing so much of your life and wellness and happiness. And she knew that being a father was going to be important to me. So she would have rather me done anything that other than become a doctor. I mean, I think she's proud and all of that, but actually, no, she didn't want me to do it at all. So I was never pushed in this direction, but my examples were all doctors. Even my great aunt was a doctor. So lots of doctors. Yeah.
Well, we have so many questions and very little time left, but people are all asking about how to see the film. Obviously, your book, Death is But a Dream, is easily accessible on all media outlets. But the surviving death, as well as Death is But a Dream.
Surviving Death is on Netflix, and we're episode 5. Death is But a Dream is unfortunately not available digitally because it's being looked at for purchase by a commercial entity like Netflix or whatever. So you can buy it online. If you look up Death is But a Dream in the documentary, they have a site where you can buy it. But is Netflix in UK too? Yes, Death is But a Dream is on Netflix in the UK. So you can buy it online, but if you want, I'm happy if you send me any mailing address, I can send you digital copies that you could share with people if you want.
Well, thank you. Goodness gracious. Well, that's wonderful. And
I never intended it to be sold, so it's not us. I'm very disappointed because the idea was to get the message out of this, not to. So, anyways, I don't blame the young people who put a lot of money into it. Did somebody here from Toronto? Did I see when they signed on?
Yes, we have Camille, who's from Toronto. Let's see,
my hometown.
That's wonderful. Here, Camille, do you want to unmute and say hi to Dr. Kerr?
Oh,
hi, Dr. Kerr.
Hi, how are you? Where are you from?
I'm good. Toronto, Forest Hill.
Oh,
how about
wow.
you?
I'm from Etobicoke.
Oh, wow. I've got lots of friends, close friends in Etobicoke. Yeah.
I've been living in Huntsville for most of COVID, caring for my mom.
I'm actually in the Kawartha Lakes.
Oh, are you really?
I'm not in Toronto. Same thing, COVID and, not being in the big city.
Don't blame you. Yeah.
Where did you go to medical school?
Ohio State.
Oh, in Ohio State. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I was an ICU nurse years ago, so I thought maybe we might have crossed paths in Toronto.
What hospital?
Toronto General.
I was in my father, my family's all at St. Mike's. So.
Oh, great hospital. Great. Oh, excellent hospital. Yeah. Well, very nice to meet you, and thank you for this.
Thank you.
This is just amazing work you're doing. And I'm the one who asked about the brain studies. That's because of my background, but I'm also quite a believer, and I saw a lot. There's a lot of parallels between near-death experiences that I witnessed in my hospital practice and what you talk about with end-of-life experiences as well. So
there is a tremendous overlap.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I want to say that we do have one of our affiliate groups is in Toronto. We have several affiliate groups.
Oh, wonderful.
In Canada as well. So anyway, we truly appreciate
it was my pleasure
being here. We appreciate Julie Ryan being here as well, who everything that Julie was telling us was validated by what you were able to tell us about these dreams as well. So that was very exciting, I think, for everyone who's already heard Julie speak, to be able to have a medical doctor affirming everything that she was saying as well. And are there any other parting words of wisdom that you'd like?
If you want to see more videos, though, I think there's more on my website that you can look at. I'm a big believer, as you can tell by the lecture, that it's better hearing from the patients and families. But it's Dr. Christopher with a C, KERR.com. Dr. Christopher.
Thank you so much. And what we always do at the end of these meetings is ask everyone to unmute and say thank you and goodbye. And if possible, maybe next time we could have you back to be able to have you answer some more questions. And maybe show some more videos.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Kerr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kerr.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie.